Welcome to Fear Files. Tonight, we journey into the eerie world of haunted lighthouses. Join us as we uncover the chilling tales of desperate souls bound by curses and the brave caretakers who confront malevolent forces. Stay tuned as the fog rolls in and the ghosts emerge from the shadows. Prepare for a night of spine-tingling horror.
Samuel Harrington had always loved the solitude of the lighthouse. For 20 years, he had tended the beacon on the desolate island off the coast of Maine, far from the bustle of civilization. His only company was the relentless sea and the ever-present fog that shrouded the island in a perpetual twilight. The lighthouse, with its ancient stone walls and rusting metalwork, stood like a sentinel against the encroaching darkness of the Atlantic. It was the early 1900s, and Samuel had grown accustomed to the isolation. His daily routine was unchanging, maintaining the lantern, checking the oil, and ensuring the beam cut through the fog with unwavering precision. The island's weather was harsh, and the isolation was absolute, save for the occasional supply boat and rare visits from curious townsfolk. The last few months, however, had been different. The fog had grown thicker, more oppressive, and Samuel started to hear whispers, faint, indistinguishable sounds that seemed to emanate from the fog itself. He dismissed them at first, attributing them to the creaking of the lighthouse and the howling wind. But as the weeks went on, the whispers became more persistent, more unnerving. One stormy night, as lightning cracked the sky and the winds howled around the lighthouse, Samuel heard something distinctly different in the whispers, something urgent, almost pleading. His heart raced as he climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room, where the beam cut through the fog with its usual intensity. The storm battered the lighthouse, and Samuel felt a growing sense of dread. He scanned the beam's light for any sign of trouble, but saw nothing unusual. As the storm reached its peak, the whispers grew louder, morphing into eerie, mournful cries. Samuel's hands trembled as he gripped the railing. He turned to the beam and was startled to see a faint, ghostly image shimmering within the light, an image of a shipwrecked crew, their faces twisted in anguish. The following day, the storm had passed, but the fog remained, thicker and more suffocating than ever. Samuel's attempts to find rational explanations for the ghostly apparition proved futile. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, he began to investigate the history of the lighthouse and the surrounding waters. In the local town, Samuel spoke to the elderly townsfolk, who were all too eager to share ghost stories and maritime legends. It was an old sailor, Jacob Reed, who finally provided a clue. Jacob spoke of the Sea Spirit, a ship that had vanished in a storm a decade earlier. According to the legend, the ship had been carrying valuable cargo and a crew of desperate souls seeking to escape their pasts. The story was that the ship had been lured to its doom by a false light, a beacon that had led it astray. Samuel was intrigued. He began to research further, finding old logs and records that spoke of a shipwreck, a failed rescue attempt, and the bitter aftermath. It seemed that the Sea Spirit had been lost to the sea, and its crew was never recovered. Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that the lighthouse was somehow involved. As days turned into weeks, the whispers grew more insistent. Samuel would often hear them at night when the fog was at its thickest. He tried to communicate with the spirits, but they remained elusive. He felt as though he was being watched, that there was a presence within the lighthouse that wanted him to uncover the truth. Part 3. The Unveiling of the Past. One particularly foggy night, Samuel experienced a vision, a chilling reenactment of the shipwreck. He saw the Sea Spirit battling against monstrous waves, its crew screaming in terror as the lighthouse beam led them astray. The vision was so vivid that Samuel could almost hear the crack of splintering wood and the desperate cries for help. Determined to uncover the truth, Samuel delved into the lighthouse's archives, discovering an old logbook hidden away in a dusty corner. The logbook contained cryptic entries about a secret pact made between the lighthouse keeper and the captain of the sea spirit. The entries hinted at a deal gone horribly wrong, where the lighthouse keeper was bribed to mislead the ship in exchange for wealth. Samuel realized with horror that the previous keeper, long since dead, had been involved in the shipwreck. As Samuel pieced together the story, the apparitions grew more malevolent. They began to appear more frequently, their faces twisted in rage and sorrow. Samuel felt their anger directed at him, as though they believed he was complicit in their doom. The whispers turned into shrieks, and the lighthouse's once familiar corridors became a maze of tormenting phantoms. Samuel's nights were filled with nightmares. The spirits tormented him, reliving their final moments in a nightmarish loop. He was haunted by visions of the shipwreck, the dying crew reaching out to him with ghostly hands. The lighthouse beams seemed to pulse with their collective agony. Desperate to find redemption for the spirits and to escape the clutches of their malevolence, Samuel sought out the descendants of the ship's crew. He learned that the surviving relatives had been living with the burden of their ancestors' untold tragedy. Samuel contacted them, sharing the horrifying truth and seeking their forgiveness. In a final, desperate attempt to bring peace, Samuel arranged a ritual of atonement. The relatives gathered at the lighthouse, and together they performed a ceremony to honor the lost souls of the sea spirit. As the ritual reached its climax, the ghosts began to dissipate, their anguished cries fading into silence. The storm that had plagued the island for so long finally abated. The fog began to lift, revealing a clearer horizon. Samuel remained at the lighthouse, but the oppressive whispers were gone, replaced by a serene quiet. The ghosts of the sea spirit had finally found their peace, and the lighthouse once again stood as a guardian against the treacherous waters. Samuel's sense of isolation remained, but it was now tinged with a bittersweet sense of closure. The lighthouse was no longer a place of torment, but a symbol of redemption and hope. Samuel knew that the whispers through the fog had led him to uncover a dark past, but in doing so he had brought solace to restless souls and restored the lighthouse's true purpose. As Samuel watched the beacon cut through the fog once more, he reflected on the harsh lessons learned and the price of redemption. The lighthouse, with its storied past, stood as a testament to the enduring struggle between light and darkness, and Samuel, the solitary keeper, continued his watch, forever bound to the island's eerie legacy. Isabella Hartley stepped off the small boat and onto the rocky shore of the remote island. The lighthouse loomed above her, a stark silhouette against the foggy sky. She took a deep breath, inhaling the salty sea air mixed with a hint of decay. This was her new home, her new responsibility. The old caretaker, Mr. Thompson, had left abruptly, leaving behind a cryptic message about the lighthouse being cursed. Isabella had dismissed it as the ramblings of a superstitious old man. She was here to do a job, and she would do it well. The interior of the lighthouse was cold and damp. The walls were lined with the remnants of previous caretakers, old logbooks, tools, and personal belongings. Isabella set to work, cleaning and organizing, making the place her own. As night fell, she climbed to the lantern room and lit the beacon. The light flickered to life, cutting through the dense fog like a knife. For the first few nights, everything seemed normal. Isabella settled into a routine, maintaining the lighthouse and exploring the island. She found old journals and records that spoke of the lighthouse's long history and the many ships it had guided, or failed to guide, through the treacherous waters. Then, on the fifth night, the light flickered. Isabella checked the equipment, finding nothing amiss. She chalked it up to a minor electrical issue and continued her duties. But the flickering persisted, growing more frequent and erratic. One foggy evening, as Isabella stood in the lantern room, She saw a figure in the mist. It was faint, almost ethereal, a sailor, his clothes tattered and eyes hollow. He stared at her with a look of profound sadness before disappearing into the fog. Isabella's heart raced. She tried to convince herself it was a trick of the light, a figment of her imagination. But the next night, more figures appeared, their ghostly forms drifting through the fog, their eyes full of sorrow and accusation. One night, as she sat in the lantern room, the light flickering around her, a figure emerged from the fog and stepped into the room. It was the captain, a tall, imposing figure with a weathered face and piercing eyes. "You must help us," he said, his voice echoing with a haunting, otherworldly quality. "We are trapped, cursed to relive our final moments. You must break the curse." Isabella's hands trembled. "How? How can I help you?" The captain's eyes bored into hers. "You must uncover the truth of the curse. Only then can we be free." With that, he vanished, leaving Isabella alone in the flickering light. She knew she had to find the source of the curse, but where to start? Isabella began her investigation, poring over the old logbooks and journals left behind by previous caretakers. She learned that the lighthouse had been built over the ruins of an old fortress, and that many ships had met their doom in the waters surrounding the island. But one ship, the Harbinger, stood out. It had been captained by Nathaniel Ward, a man known for his ruthlessness and ambition. According to the records, the Harbinger had been carrying a valuable cargo and a crew of desperate men. It had vanished in a storm, and rumors spoke of a curse placed upon the ship by a vengeful witch who had been wronged by the captain. Isabella's heart sank as she read the accounts. It seemed the curse had extended to the lighthouse, trapping the souls of the shipwrecked crew. Isabella knew she had to find more information. She traveled to the mainland and visited the local library, searching for any records or accounts of the Harbinger and its ill-fated voyage. She discovered a series of letters written by the witch, revealing her anger and desire for revenge. The final letter spoke of a ritual performed at the lighthouse, sealing the fate of the crew. Isabella returned to the island with a sense of urgency. She had to perform a counter-ritual to break the curse, but she needed to find the right incantation and ingredients. She scoured the lighthouse and the island, finding clues and symbols that guided her to the ritual's components. As Isabella prepared for the ritual, the spirits grew more restless. The light flickered constantly, and the ghostly apparitions became more aggressive. They whispered threats and accusations, their eyes burning with hatred. Isabella steeled herself, determined to see it through. On the night of the ritual, a storm raged around the lighthouse. Isabella gathered the ingredients and performed the incantation, her voice trembling but resolute. As she chanted, the spirits swirled around her, their cries echoing through the lantern room. The captain appeared, his eyes filled with both hope and fear. "You must complete the ritual," he urged. "Free us from this curse." Isabella finished the incantation, her voice rising above the storm. There was a blinding flash of light, and the spirits screamed in unison. The lighthouse shook, and Isabella was thrown to the ground. When she awoke, the storm had passed and the fog had lifted. The lighthouse was still, the light steady and unwavering. The ghostly figures were gone, and the air felt lighter, free of the oppressive weight it had carried for so long. Isabella knew the curse had been broken. The souls of the shipwrecked crew were finally at peace. Their suffering ended. She stood in the lantern room, watching the light sweep across the calm sea, feeling a sense of accomplishment and closure. Isabella continued her duties as the lighthouse caretaker, but the island no longer felt like a place of dread. She found solace in the routine and a newfound appreciation for the lighthouse's history. She wrote about her experiences, hoping to preserve the story of the Harbinger and its tragic fate. One day, she received a letter from a man claiming to be the descendant of Captain Nathaniel Ward. He thanked her for freeing his ancestor's soul and expressed a desire to visit the lighthouse. Isabella agreed, feeling that it was important for the family to find closure as well. When the man arrived, he and Isabella walked the island, sharing stories and piecing together the history of the curse. It was a cathartic experience for both of them, and they forged a friendship based on their shared connection to the lighthouse and its haunted past. As the years went by, Isabella became known as the lighthouse keeper who had freed the souls of the Harbinger. The island, once feared and avoided, became a place of interest and reverence. People came to hear the story and to see the lighthouse that had once been cursed. Isabella found peace in her work and her connection to the sea. She knew that the spirits of the Harbinger were finally at rest, and she had played a part in their redemption. The lighthouse continued to stand as a beacon of hope and a reminder of the power of confronting the past. And every night, as she lit the beacon, Isabella would look out at the calm sea, remembering the ghostly figures and the journey that had brought her here. She felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had made a difference and brought light to a place that had once been shrouded in darkness. Ethan McLeod disembarked from the small boat, his boots sinking into the wet sand of the isolated island. The lighthouse loomed above him, a solitary sentinel against the stormy sky. The air was thick with fog, and the mournful cry of seagulls echoed in the distance. He took a deep breath, the salty sea air filling his lungs, mingled with the scent of decay and damp earth. This was his new home, far from the bustling world he had left behind. The old caretaker, Mr. Granger, had vanished without a trace, leaving only a hastily scribbled note warning of dangers that Ethan dismissed as the ravings of a madman. He was here to maintain the lighthouse, to ensure its light continued to guide ships safely through the treacherous waters. But as he stepped inside the lighthouse, the chill in the air seemed to seep into his bones, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The interior was dim and musty, filled with the remnants of those who had come before him. Old logbooks, rusted tools, and personal belongings. As night fell, Ethan climbed the winding stairs to the lantern room, lighting the beacon that cut through the dense fog like a blade. He watched the light sweep across the dark waters, feeling a sense of duty and purpose. The first few nights passed uneventfully. Ethan settled into a routine, performing maintenance on the lighthouse and exploring the island. He discovered an old logbook tucked away in a dusty corner, its pages filled with the scrawled handwriting of past caretakers. The entries spoke of shipwrecks, strange occurrences, and desperate pleas for salvation. Intrigued, Ethan began reading the logbook in his spare time. The entries in the logbook grew more disturbing with each page. They detailed the tragic fate of a shipwrecked crew, their cries for help, and the increasing sense of dread that permeated the lighthouse. Each entry seemed to carry a weight of despair, as if the very ink were infused with the suffering of the souls it described. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine as he read, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. One entry, dated over a century ago, spoke of a ship named the Eldritch, captained by Jonathan Blackwood. The ship had gone down in a fierce storm, its crew lost to the merciless sea. The caretaker at the time had written of ghostly apparitions, pleading voices, and a malevolent presence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing night. As Ethan delved deeper into the logbook, he began to experience strange occurrences. The temperature would drop suddenly, and he would hear faint whispers carried on the wind. At first, he dismissed them as his imagination, but the manifestations grew more tangible. One night, as he sat in the lantern room, the light flickered and dimmed, and he saw a figure in the mist, a sailor, his eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. The apparition vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Ethan shaken. He realized that the logbook was more than just a record of past events. It was a conduit for the spirits, binding them to the lighthouse. Each entry he read seemed to strengthen their presence, drawing them closer to the realm of the living. Ethan's nights were plagued by ghostly visitations. The spirits of the drowned sailors appeared with increasing frequency, their forms growing more defined and their pleas more desperate. They spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that had caused the shipwreck and trapped their souls. They begged Ethan to help them, to free them from their torment. One spirit, the captain of the Eldritch, appeared more frequently than the others. His presence was both commanding and sorrowful, his eyes reflecting the pain of centuries. He told Ethan of the Drowned One, an ancient sea spirit that had once been a protector, but had become corrupted and vengeful. The Drowned One had caused the storm that wrecked the Eldritch, claiming the souls of the crew and binding them to the lighthouse. The captain explained that the logbook held the key to breaking the curse. Hidden within its pages was a ritual that could banish the Drowned One and free the trapped spirits. But the ritual was dangerous, requiring Ethan to confront the malevolent entity and risk his own life in the process. Determined to help the spirits and uncover the truth, Ethan began searching the logbook for clues. He discovered symbols and incantations, pieces of a puzzle that would lead him to the ritual. The spirits guided him, their voices echoing in his mind, urging him to continue. As Ethan prepared for the ritual, the spirits grew more agitated. The light in the lighthouse flickered constantly, and the air was thick with tension. The Drowned One's presence was palpable, a dark force that seemed to loom over the island, watching and waiting. On the night of the ritual, a storm raged around the lighthouse. Ethan gathered the necessary ingredients and climbed to the lantern room, his heart pounding with fear and determination. The spirits of the drowned sailors surrounded him, their forms flickering in and out of existence, their eyes filled with hope and desperation. Ethan began the incantation, his voice trembling but resolute. As he chanted, the temperature plummeted, and a dark, shadowy figure emerged from the depths of the sea. The Drowned One, a monstrous entity with glowing eyes and a form that seemed to shift and writhe like the ocean itself, loomed before him. The Drowned One's voice was a rumble of thunder, filled with rage and sorrow. "You dare to challenge me, mortal. You will suffer as they have suffered." Ethan continued the ritual, his voice growing stronger as the spirits joined in, their collective will battling the malevolent force. The Drowned One roared in anger, lashing out with tendrils of darkness that sought to ensnare Ethan and the spirits. The battle was fierce and harrowing, a clash of wills and supernatural forces. Ethan felt the weight of the spirits' suffering, their pain and despair fueling his determination. With a final, desperate cry, he completed the incantation, the symbols in the logbook glowing with a blinding light. The Drowned One shrieked in agony, its form dissolving into a swirling vortex of darkness and light. The spirits of the drowned sailors cried out in unison, their voices filled with relief and gratitude. As the vortex closed, the lighthouse shook, and a brilliant light filled the room, banishing the darkness. Ethan collapsed to the floor, exhausted and trembling. The storm outside had subsided, and the air felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted. The spirits of the drowned sailors appeared one last time, their forms shimmering with a peaceful glow. "Thank you," the captain said, his voice filled with emotion. "You have freed us from our torment. We can finally rest." Ethan watched as the spirits faded into the light, their presence a comforting warmth that filled the lighthouse. He knew that their suffering had ended, and he had played a part in their redemption. The logbook, once a conduit for their torment, now lay silent and inert. In the days that followed, Ethan continued his duties as the lighthouse caretaker, but the island no longer felt like a place of dread. He found solace in the routine and a newfound appreciation for the lighthouse's history. He wrote about his experiences, hoping to preserve the story of the Eldritch and its tragic fate. One day, he received a letter from a woman claiming to be the descendant of Captain Jonathan Blackwood. She thanked him for freeing her ancestor's soul and expressed a desire to visit the lighthouse. Ethan agreed, feeling that it was important for the family to find closure as well. When the woman arrived, she and Ethan walked the island, sharing stories and piecing together the history of the curse. It was a cathartic experience for both of them, and they forged a friendship based on their shared connection to the lighthouse and its haunted past. As the years went by, Ethan became known as the Lighthouse Keeper, who had freed the souls of the Eldritch. The island, once feared and avoided, became a place of interest and reverence. People came to hear the story and to see the lighthouse that had once been cursed. Ethan found peace in his work and his connection to the sea. He knew that the spirits of the Eldritch were finally at rest, and he had played a part in their redemption. The lighthouse continued to stand as a beacon of hope and a reminder of the power of confronting the past. And every night as he lit the beacon, Ethan would look out at the calm sea, remembering the ghostly figures and the journey that had brought him here. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had made a difference and brought light to a place that had once been shrouded in darkness.
Thank you for joining us on this spine-chilling journey through haunted lighthouses. If you enjoyed these terrifying tales, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest horror stories. Share your thoughts and fears in the comments below. Your feedback fuels our nightmares. Until next time, keep your lights burning bright and beware the shadows. Sweet dreams, if you can.